The communicators. And this is the communicators. And this is the communicators. And you don't know where the humming is coming from. And this is the communicators. The communicators. Can you hear me?
No, not in the earphones. No.
And this is the communicators. The communicators. The communicators. The communicators. Can you hear me now?
Not in the ear. I could just hear you because, we're right near each other.
The communicators. The communicators. The communicators. Communicators.
Yeah, because I should be hearing you through the earphones, right?
Right.
No, I don't think I am. Am I? No. Maybe.
The communicators. The communicators.
No,
the communicators.
No. Oh. You're saying we're those? Okay.
The communicators. The communicators.
Okay.
Communicators. Communicators. Coming to you from the Grand Houses Community Radio.
Okay. All right, now I can hear.
Grand Houses Community Radio.
Yeah, I can hear now.
Can you hear me? Grand Houses Community Radio. Grand Houses Community Radio.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that's me hearing
right.
you.
Grand Houses Community Radio. Okay. It's Forward March.
Okay.
All right. Ready to go. And this is part 2 of the communicators on November 10th, 2019. We're very happy to have with us a young lady that we met some time ago. I don't keep track of dates, so she'll have to do that for me. But there's a magnificent healer in the history of black people in America and in Central America, in fact, in the world. His name is Dr. Sebi. And Dr. Sebi was a brother who another brother wanted me to interview. Name is Menelik, Brother Ransford. And I resisted interviewing or giving any of my time to this herbalist that I had not known, who was from Honduras. I resisted because I'd had experience with a shaman from South America who brought information and knowledge to black people here in New York, knowledge of what we have but don't know we have in terms of our innate abilities and powers, spiritual powers. It turned out that that relationship wasn't that great, so I wouldn't be access to anyone else reaching our people. But Menelik stayed on me, and subsequently I met this brother, Dr. Sebi, who told the story about Teddy Pendergrass, the singer who had been paralyzed from his neck down. And Menelik, when he took me to Dr. Sebi, I pursued the story that Menelik had shared with me. And that story was that Sebi, had been brought into the orbit of Teddy Pendergrass and to see what he could do in terms of removing the paralysis, and was successful in moving the paralysis, according to Sebi, the paralysis from his neck, from Teddy's neck down to his waist. In other words, he was not mobile below his neck when Dr. Sebi came to be engaged with him by his family, in fact. So that relationship broke off, but the claim that he had moved the paralysis away from the upper extremities down to the waist was indeed fascinating and, quote, impossible to believe. But I believe black people can do anything, but I need proof. So I met the lawyers who had, two women lawyers who had engaged Dr. Sebi. And I met them under circumstances which was not planned by Sebi or Menelik. It just happened that I met them, and I asked them to verify what I had been told by Sebi, what I had been told by Menelik, etc., and they verified it. I said, okay. So that was good enough for me, and that began my engagement with Dr. Sebi. But the next person that I met when Dr. Sebi wasn't in New York was this sister we have in studio now, and her name is Annette Thomas, and we're going to get into some aspects of the life of Dr. Sebi. Thank you for joining us on The Communicators.
Well, thank you for having me back on The Communicator, and I'm honored to be speaking to Grant Housing Community audience over the Grant Housing Community radio station.
Indeed.
And so to give people a little bit more detail on how you opened up and some of that information, the first time I was on The Communicators, I accompanied Sebi up at WHCR community radio. So that was in the 80s, somewhere around maybe 83, 84. And that was like the time. Mm-hmm. So that's how long ago it was.
Okay.
We're talking almost 30 years ago.
A lifetime for some of us.
Yes.
Here's the fascinating thing, that when I began to get involved with Sebi, there were all of these healings that were, quote, impossible. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was able to do the first series of interviews with his patients here in New York. Mm-hmm. And that's documentation that sickle cell, high blood pressure,
myasthenia gravis, Zadia Ife.
Right.
Uh-huh.
There were 4 interviews, but mm-hmm. these were fascinating stories. Mm-hmm. So I want to have you, Annette, mm-hmm. share some of the miracles. We can't do everything in one show, but give people an appreciation of a black man who was able and is still able to heal people who have been designated as impossible to heal, and has done it through the formulation of formulas, etc. Mm-hmm. Even his care and concern, how he would calm people out and et cetera. So what are some of the miracles that you have seen that have been executed by way of Dr. Sebi and his formulations?
And the protocol.
How they've done them, how they were executed. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to go back as to how you came in contact, but want the miracles first.
Right. So I'm going to talk about Teddy Pendergrass, because I was in my herbal apprenticeship with Brother Sebi when the case for Teddy Pendergrass came to us. I met Dr. Sebi on the island of St. Croix, and I began my herbal apprenticeship with him in the fall of 1981. So we would not only would we see clientele on the island of St. Croix, that's the U.S. Virgin Islands, but we would go to the other islands, which is St. Thomas and St. John. So we were over there we were in St. Thomas one weekend, doing radio performances, because at that time Sebi was the main spokesperson. And as I said, I was under my herbal apprenticeship, and then he had other people involved that did other aspects of the business or the mission. And we got a phone call from a friend of Dr. Sebi's. He was an old friend from California who met Sebi, knew Sebi in the 70s, where he was doing healing in California before he actually left and started traveling globally. And he was at a celebrity party where Dick Gregory was there and some other stars. And so they got into a topic about Teddy Pendergrass's accident and his post-operable condition. So they were saying in the talk, people were saying, wow, do you ever think Teddy will be able to get up again and resume his career? And so, there was all this opinion back and forth. And then it was what was told to us is that Dick Gregory was the one who said the only way Teddy will ever get up again is that he'll need an herbalist to help him do that. So Sebi's friend Todd was there, and he heard that, right? So then there was talk. Oh, I know an herbalist. This brother named Sebi, he can get Teddy up. So from that, Glenda is the lawyer. One of the lawyers you were talking about. She's an entertainment lawyer, and she knew Todd because he was in music. And so from that, the phone call was made at the hotel that we were at in St. Thomas. And so Sebi was talking to Todd, and he was saying, "Oh, there's this singer. He was in this car accident." Sebi didn't know who he was, because Sebi was one of those brothers. He was that generation into jazz. He didn't know Teddy because Teddy was like a current pop, icon of probably the 80s. So when he got off the phone, I knew who he was, right? I said, yeah, I know who he is. I heard about the accident, So Sebi was invited to a interview with Teddy and his manager, Miss Walker, because they were going to interview him with Deepak Chopra to decide who they were going to go with. So Sebi went to that interview with a young lady who was part of the original people who were working with Sebi when I met him in St. Croix. Her name was Karen Hunt. And when they came back from that meeting, they chose Sebi. So after I think she went, the thing was to go every month, and with the herbal tonics and the dietary regimen, and the actual part of what Sebi did was talking to people, because that was a very important part of the healing and the protocol, like just the kind of information and the kinds of conversations he would have with people to inspire them, right, to do it. So probably on the third visit, I started going. So I witnessed Teddy Pendergrass. I witnessed the healing of his body. So I'm going to use some language. He was operating at what they call a C2, meaning cervical vertebrae, because your vertebrae are divided: cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. So when we got to him, I think he was at C1, which only really controls like your eyeballs, your mouth, your nose, your ears, and things of that sort. But everything, like from C3 all the way down, nothing was working because the nerves and everything were severed. So the doctors, the allopathic doctors, had inserted like a titanium rod, so that he could be upright. But from the neck down, he was in a brace, in a wheelchair, and he was very, like stiff, paralyzed from the neck down. He looked like a barrel, like in his abdominal cavity. And the reason why that is because his, of course, because he was paralyzed, right? His vital organs were working, but everything was, very weak. But his his colon was not receiving the electrical impulse to evacuate, right? So he had buildup of waste and fecal matter. So he had an actual live-in nurse who was a Russian woman, and they had a machine that would suck the fecal matter out of his lower bowels, right? So in between a matter of it might have been 4 to 6 months, right? He was operating between a C4 and a C5. So he came out of the neck brace. He was able to move his head left and right, up and down. He was moving his arms like up and down. He was having evacuation, bowel evacuation, because by the end of it was about 4 to 6 months, all of his abdominal cavity changed. It shape shift, where he had cleaned out like an enormous amount of waste, right? He was also able to urinate again, because they had to catheterize him to even urinate. So he was urinating, defecating, and the other part of it is, because this is a part of anatomy and physiology, he was able to get erection again, right? Because all of that did not happen. So the thing what the doctors would tell Teddy Pendergrass is that the brain and the nerve cells, once they're damaged, they don't regenerate. Mm-hmm. And Sebi said that was a lie, because his knowledge of anatomy and physiology was that the body regenerates itself. All parts of the body regenerate themselves. Cells, once you provide the right environment and the right nutrition, they proliferate, they regenerate, and they create new tissue, new organs, new glands. And so that's what we witnessed with Teddy Pendergrass.
And Sebi said that at the point at which he became involved with Teddy, that they had contemplated sending him, the family had contemplated sending him to Russia for healing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Russia, they have different kinds of advanced therapies, right. But like I said, they got such miraculous benefits from the protocol. So
the protocol of Sebi.
Yeah. So this is what. So the protocol was the brand that the tonics were under at that time was the Fig Tree. So it was those nutritional tonics that is what promoted the healing process on a nutritional level, right? So what we were formulating for Teddy every month was the blood tonic, nerve, immune, multi-mineral, right? So, but in his case, instead of us formulating and prescribing like an 8-ounce bottle, which we would do for the average client, we would be making a whole gallon, right? So I would make a gallon of the Nervino, a gallon of the immune. The other sister at the time was that also was part of Dr. Sebi's life at the time. Her name is Ma'a. She made the blood. Then we had the salve that we made, but he got a gallon. So that every time we went to see him, we brought him a gallon of everything. So his mother, at the time, she was the one that I would go into the kitchen and explain, this is the amount you give him. This is how you prepare the food. This is how you make the almond milk to make his, smoothies. Because at that time, they were not, the non-dairy companies were not making these non-dairy milks. People were making them themselves. So I would have to show her, this is what you do. You blanch the almonds and take the skin off. You put it in the blender with distilled water and you make your milk. And then you add that to the sea moss and you make them a nice hot beverage that's almost, when you do it like that, you put like almond milk with sea moss gel. and a little bit of maple syrup, it kind of mimics Ovaltine. So this is the nutrition that he was eating on a daily basis for about for that time that caused his body to regenerate on a cellular level. Because like Dr. Sebi used to always say when he would be on the communicator and we got to the part where you would say, okay, Dr. Sebi, how did you do that? He would say, Brother Leroy, we do two basic things. We do intracellular cleansing,
Sure.
and we simultaneously are nourishing all the cells of the body. Those two things will heal anything. He used to say that all the time.
And I heard him, but what was this intracellular cleansing today? I hear that
Yes.
used by non-black folks.
Oh yeah. So you asked, what is it, right? And so what it is Dr. Sebi understood in order to heal the body, you had to not only go to the colon, which is the therapy that a lot of protocols focus on, right? They just focus on emptying out the bowel, the large intestine, the ascending, the transverse, and the descending. Sebi's knowledge and intelligence was beyond that, where he understood the anatomy and the physiology of the body, and he understood that each individual cell creates metabolic waste, and the bloodstream is what removes that waste from those 500 trillion cells. So if that's not happening, then that means that those 500 trillion cells are holding waste. So that is why we use that protocol and those herbal formulas to cleanse those 500 trillion cells.
The cells have garbage in them.
Yes, they create waste based on how they function.
Anyway,
so I'm going to say this: you have witnessed people who our brother Sebi would recommend a fast.
right.
And they would begin this fast. Sometimes 30 days, others 60s, and there were people who went beyond 90. And you have been told by those people that way into 70 days, the body was still releasing waste.
They were, pardon me.
Right.
That's the mother of my youngest son,
Yeah.
Gwen.
Yeah.
And as she went on this fast, well, it started out with her being on the compounds
Yes.
and salads.
Yes.
And then it went to, correct me if I'm off with this,
Yeah.
then it went from the vegetable salads to fruit salads,
Yeah.
the compounds and the fruit salads.
Right.
Then, and she would run these, it was either 2 weeks of compounds. Then the next 2 weeks he said, well, we're going to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he eased her into 30 days, and then it was 60 days,
Right.
and she was skin and bones.
Yeah.
She was skin and bones, and people at her job felt that she was in harm's way.
Yes. Yes.
So she would tell me this, and I said, well, how do you feel? She said, I feel great.
Right.
I said, well, then continue.
Right. Right.
And when it got to 90 days, what happened is that she began to grow hair where she had pulled her hair out in high school.
Right.
And there was scar tissue there.
Right.
But now she was growing hair
Right.
where the scar tissue
Right.
was.
Because what had happened on that deep cellular level, what had happened is that scar tissue, which is it's like like a fiber, right? It's a fiber that it's almost like a netting kind of a substance that gets created when there's a scar tissue, right? Because there's this layer of tissue under your skin that's called fascia, right? So when that gets damaged, it's like it knots up. It's almost like how people dread their hair.
Right.
Our people dread their hair. Well, that's what happens on the inside too with fascia. So once that happens, the nerves, the lymphatic fluid, the blood, it innervates fascia. It moves through it, right? But if it's all knotted and meshed up and blocked, then you don't get nutrition in that area, so your hair can't grow. Because your hair grows based on internal nutrition hitting a hair follicle, nourishing that hair follicle, and then the hair grows.
Got it.
So that all cleared away. It dissolved away over a period of time. And so the movement of blood, nutrients, oxygen, lymph, all of that returned. That's why our hair started growing again.
So I saw that.
Yeah.
I witnessed.
Right. But
that.
that's what was happening internally. That's how that happened.
And the 90-day fast was a 90-day fast. She had the discipline to do it. She became angry as he would prolong. Well, we got to go another.
Right. But that's
2
how
weeks.
he would do it because psychologically, and I saw him do this many times during my consultation sessions where I was going, still being in training because, I stayed in training because it was so much to learn. He would not start a person out and say, you're going to be on a 90-day fast, because most people psychologically, they would be afraid. They wouldn't think that was possible. So as you said, he would, 2 weeks. Then they would be responding well, right? Okay, 2 more weeks. Okay, another week. Next thing you know, they were well into like 6 weeks. And then once people got into 2 months, they were in a good place. And they were actually ready to try it and extend it longer because he would, like you said, they would be on the blood compound, they would be on the nerve, they would be on the bitters, right? So as the body keeps dumping out the waste, then the body's own innate ability to heal and to resume its intelligence, right? In terms of how everything works together. They call that homeostasis, right? That's like all of the body working all interdependently, harmoniously, and in a peaceful way, right? So when people experience that internal feeling, they feel that stability, they feel that trust that I can do this another week. Plus they feel the energetics from it. Because another person who did that 90-day fast is my cousin, Martin Bow, who made 92 this year. Wow. I went to his birthday party, and I also recently did an interview with him because his son is doing a life documentary of his father. Because Martin Bow is the person who did the iconic photo of Dr. Sebi, that everybody knows him, right? Right. But in the interview, they interviewed me about how Martin came to be the photographer that got hired to do that photograph, and I was the one who hired him, right? So he also told the story of when Sebi put him on the 90-day fast. And how he knows that point in his life, when he did that 90-day fast, was the point in his life to ensure that he would be able to live to be 92. Wow. Because Sebi told him, Martin, if you do this 90-day fast, it's going to put another 50 to 60 years on your life. I trust me, brother. And Martin and many of the brothers and sisters, they had wholehearted trust in brother Sebi. I mean, that's just the kind of rapport, and energy he would create with people.
Talk about the sister in Brooklyn there was a couple.
Emma Wright was the young lady who was healed of sickle cell. Emma Wright. Emma Wright. Yeah, there's an Amsterdam News clip that I still possess, in my archive. And the way that happened was I'm a native New Yorker, so I was born and raised in Harlem. When Dr. Sebi came back to New York, one of the reasons why he came back to New York is because when we were dealing with Teddy every month, I asked him would he come here and meet my mother and my family, right? Because I had seen all these miraculous cures in St. Croix, in the neighboring islands we used to go to every month. I have my own story that's, one day I'll be able to share it with you and the audience. But he said yes. And then he also wanted to reconnect with the Honduranian community in New York City that he knew was here. So we came here. Now, I knew Menelik. Mm-hmm. Menelik was my friend before I left New York in the 80s and moved back to the Virgin Islands. And he was one of the first people I called when Sabi and I came to New York City, because I said, Menelik, you will not believe what happened to me in St. Croix. And he was going through a health issue where he was getting ready to go have an operation. And I said, Menelik, don't do it. And of course he thought I was crazy, right? But Menelik, because he's from the islands too, his lineage is Jamaica. When I start talking about Sabi was an herbalist, what I had seen, some of the herbs, he knew about that because he had experienced that in his own culture and tradition in Jamaica. So he met Sabi, came to the hotel and met Sabi. Sabi gave him the iron, the CC4, the Nervino, the Lympholin, right? Gave him, because but at that time it was like 8 different liquids, exactly. Right? About 8. The salve. Said, look, go take that and come back and see me in a month when we get back in town. So when he came back, he was smiling because he had experienced healing. To the point that he got in touch with you.
That's right. He stayed on me.
Yes.
He said, you gotta meet this guy.
It was based on his own healing, Leroy. It was based on his own healing. And I got in touch with Brother Menelik because before I left New York, I had met him on the number 10 bus because he was a bus driver for the MTA. But he would, he was on that number 10 line. I used to take my children to school downtown, but I lived in Harlem, so that 10 was my route. And I remember the first day we got on the bus, I thought I had walked on the bus. I thought they were making a film because he's sitting up there looking like royalty driving the bus.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so that's how that happened. My love for the brother, Right. I mean, when I came back, and Sabi went to meet my mother, actually, in the projects on 112th Street and 7th Avenue. I think that's the Martin Luther King project. My mom lived there at that time. So we went up there to meet her because she was dealing with some health issues where she was on all this medication. And I knew that I would be able to help her get off. I said, she's, because I'm her baby girl, right? But I said, if she meets him, he's going to be able to talk to her in a way that she'll be open, right? So that's what we did. And like I said, I called, some other people. And then every month we would come and we would people would see us at the hotel. And, Emma Wright was one of the individuals. By that time, I had put an ad in the Amsterdam News. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, I grew up seeing my father and all the elders in the community. This is the newspaper that they read: the Amsterdam News, the Daily Challenge, the Caribbean News. These are all the newspapers he would come home and read, on a weekly basis. So that's where I advertised, and we also set up where we would have like monthly lecture series, right? And what we also did was when I was at the Amsterdam News the last time putting in my the display ad, I asked the rep, I said, we have a client that has been healed of sickle cell. We're getting ready to do a lecture. Could you send a reporter? And they did. So that I'll have a copy of that and I'll send it to you. But her name was Emma Wright, and she was diagnosed with sickle cell. And her treatment, of course, was over a period of months where we mostly concentrated with cleaning her weight loss, right? Cleaning her on the cellular level, but really concentrating on rebuilding her bloodstream, because the bloodstream rebuilds itself every 4 months, like 120 days. The body just remanufactures the blood. So it was that period of time before she actually began to get better. And so the thing was, this would be healing, right? Somebody of sickle cell, you go get your blood work, and they take your blood, they put it in the centrifuge, right? And so how it separates is, on the top is the blood plasma. That's like a fluid, a yellow fluid. And then I think it's the red blood cells, the white, and then the platelets. So her blood was now showing healthy red blood cells in the right numbers.
What Sabi explained to me, and this is regarding the young girl, not Emma Wright, but the young girl who subsequently had a baby.
Yes.
What he explained, he said the sickle, the shape of the sickle shape is a result of acid in the system.
That changes the shape of the blood, the red blood cell.
Right.
Yeah, so it mimics a sickle, which is a kind of knife.
So what you have, this is how he explained it to me. He said, so what you have to do is remove the acid from the body, and in combination with the other compounds, build, and therefore when they resume their correct shape, maintain a non-acid diet environment. So the young girl, she went against that.
Right. I was there the day they brought her here, because she see, this would happen repeatedly. People would come to us in crisis conditions, right? But either they or some family member or a friend, they didn't want to continue the medical protocol, the allopathic protocol. So they wanted to do something natural. So they would come to us, and so they would start the regimen and the protocol, and they would start healing. The body start healing. They start feeling better, energetic, out of pain. So she did that. And so she ate a pork chop and went into crises. So I was there the day her family, her aunt, brought her to the institute. She's rolling and all over the ground, crying and screaming in pain. Yeah. So he was in the kitchen
because she was in a sickle cell
crisis. Yeah, because she had eaten the food that converts into acid, and her body felt that. So he went in the kitchen, and he did preparation. And he gave it to her, and he said, "I'm interrupting you here because there's that piece in the story,
right, where he asked her what she had done."
Because so he would already know what people did. He would already know because that was the brilliance of Brother Sabi, because he knew about anatomy and physiology. He knew what our people do. He knew our habits.
Cause and effect.
Yeah. And he knew how addictive the food was. But we didn't realize that we were addicted to food. He realized it was addicted. We were addicted because he was the first person I ever said, we talk about our brothers and sisters who are on heroin and crack. We put them down and denigrate them. But we don't realize we're addicted too. We're addicted to white sugar. We're addicted to fried chicken. We're addicted to macaroni and cheese. I was like, what is he talking about? But then I started to see it because I dealt with it myself. But as I saw us say, well, avoid this food and avoid that food, right? And then you would hear people come back in a month and say, oh my God, it was so hard. I mean, I felt good. You know, I was energetic, but I just kept thinking about that macaroni and cheese. I just had to have it. Because there are certain foods people would be addicted to, and it correlated to like the disease. Right. So, that was shocking to me that, we're really addicted to these foods,
Right.
So
with the young girl, she wouldn't say
at first.
what
Right.
she had done.
Right.
So he refused to treat her.
Right. But then eventually she did. She
Say
did
that
say.
she had eaten pork.
She did say she had, but I just had a little piece, Dr. Savy, because that's what they would say too. When they finally confessed, they say, but I just had a bite, Dr. Savy, but,
And she recovered.
Yes.
My interview with her was that I said, well, how do you know that you really were healing?
Right.
She had spent so many days out from work that when she had these crises,
Right.
that they were preparing to cut her from the job, and all of a sudden, her attendance record at work was what it should have been.
Right.
And then subsequently, she had a child.
Yes.
And in fact, when she came to Sabi,
Right.
they were contemplating giving her a hysterectomy.
A hysterectomy. Right. Because, generally, like when we would get a client who had sickle cell or one of these very chronic conditions and they were young, the medical establishment would, part of what they would tell the individuals that don't look forward to having any.
That.
Yeah, they bought into that. Mm-hmm.
And so the aunt brought her in.
Yeah.
When she got well enough for them to do the operation, the aunt took her out of the hospital.
Right.
So they weren't able to take
They
their
weren't
child.
able to take.
And subsequently, she
She had her own child. Yeah, she went on. Because to have a life that they had told her in the future, don't look forward to.
Okay. We're jumping around because we're running
Out of time.
on the time. Now, where, in your understanding, in your work with Sabi, where did he get his knowledge from?
Okay.
Where was the foundation?
Okay. So, Dr. Sabi was a merchant marine. Merchant marine. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. For many years of his life, he was, on the seas, traveling around the world. And I saw this with my own eyes. When he was a merchant marine, Sabi his weight was as high as 265 pounds because I saw his merchant marine ID license.
Right.
He showed it to me one day. He had the license of when he first started at around 16 to 17, and then he showed me the one when he was an older man. I couldn't believe the transition. I mean, the football players when the necks.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and then so he smoked cigarettes. He had asthma. He was diabetic. Then at some
He said, and he couldn't perform.
right, and then at some point, he had problems in his marriage because he was suffering from impotency, and that was kind of, I think, the thing, that really, However, Sabi also talks about the period in his life when and I witnessed this too because he took me to New Orleans to meet all of these people. He was in the Nation of Islam.
Really?
For many years in his life. Now, the story I witnessed when he took me to his friend's house is that they said, "Oh my goodness." And let me tell you, Fred used to be like out there in the street, like hanging out. I mean, I wouldn't say on the same level of Malcolm, but somewhere in there, because he tells some of the stories himself. And then they said he just disappeared for a long time. Nobody saw him. When he resurfaced, he was a Muslim, right? And he had lost all of this weight. And he had the glow, the Muslim glow, the Fruit of Islam glow. He had all of that was going on. And then they said he was talking about Islam. He was talking about, because most of our brothers and sisters, when they would convert to Islam, right, the first thing they would do when they would come back to the Christians who were not converted is the pork, right? So they was, man, Fred, he'd be coming in here talking about how we need to put down our pork chops. Because, in New Orleans, that's a delicacy with that roux they cook and everything. So they said, man, he came in here talking that stuff. And the other part of Islam is the not drinking of the alcohol and the substances to alter your mind and your spirit, right? So they said, man, he came back, he was talking all that stuff, that we need to put down all of that stuff. And then they went to the part where they said how he was changed because he was talking like all the brotherhood, all the unity, all the respect of sisters, the camaraderie of entrepreneurship amongst the Muslim community in New Orleans, the paper selling, because I think at that time it was called something else. It was called Muhammad Speaks First, right? So they talked about all of that. So I'm just sitting there and I'm listening to that. Then he took me to meet the brother who taught him anatomy and physiology, who was a Muslim brother. Now, the thing about the thing that was amazing about this was the brother took out the Gray's Anatomy book that he had learned that book and knew that book from cover to cover. And that's a hard book to learn anatomy and physiology from, and that's the book he taught Sabi from. So Sabi learned anatomy and physiology from a Muslim brother in New Orleans back, we're talking 60s now. And his healing started in terms of him changing himself on a spiritual, moral level in the Nation of Islam, because he tells stories about sitting and talking and dining with Elijah Muhammad.
That's right. He does.
He tells those stories, right? Then he also said that at some point he knew Elijah Muhammad was right on point as far as the diet was concerned with our people. So the pork elimination, they were very successful with that, because I can't tell you a black person that was not influenced by Elijah Muhammad and dropping the pig, even if they were not Muslims.
Exactly.
Right? Then Elijah Muhammad published How to Eat to Live.
Right.
Right? And Sabi and a lot of brothers and sisters, they benefited health-wise from that knowledge of Elijah Muhammad's, right? So he has said often in talk, right, that at some point he realized that information and that discipline had to go to another level. In other words, we had to drop all the meat and the starches, and he knew he couldn't do it within that circle. So Spirit he had to leave and continue his journey outside of that realm, and that's what he did.
And the foundation is his foundation, and it's the sum total.
Yes.
His work aboard ship as an engineer. So when he was a merchant marine. He was a merchant. When he was a merchant marine, he started off, as I was telling you earlier, just wiping the engine. By the time he was, I think, probably in his 20s or 30s, he was a steam engineer unlimited. So his skill as an engineer was also discipline for him in terms of understanding how to heal the body. Because I think his name was Brother Frank.
I may be wrong about that, but there are people out here who know his name. If I'm not saying it correct, with that knowledge and information on how the body works, because he was the first person who he would sit down and talk to a group of people, and he would draw the anatomy and show you how it worked. You see, I mean. The most I knew about anatomy, was like what I maybe learned in what would it be, science class,
right.
Just the rudimentaries of the digestive system.
Right.
But he went even beyond that, beyond that, and it was. I just feel like it was that fundamental knowledge he got in the Nation of Islam amongst those brothers, amongst brothers of that brilliance and that intelligence. That spirit, just inspired him to go forward and continue to learn. So,
it's a great story.
Yeah.
It's a great story to be continued. Now, you produce herbal products yourself,
right? So the reason why I mentioned the fact that I was doing my herbal apprenticeship with him, which started in the island of St. Croix. That's what I currently do today. I work as an herbalist, and Dr. Sebi is my my main teacher and mentor. In this craft and in this knowledge. I currently still do that work. My company is Greenleaf Herbal Solutions, and I'm currently based in Atlanta, Georgia.
And for the audience, just checking out Sister Annette Thomas, yourself, and asking her further questions regarding what she's seen on the healing aspects of the compounds. Her number is 424-200-5469. 424-200-5469. And this interview is to be continued.
Yes.
This is only part one.
I know. It's so much to talk about.
Many chapters.
It's so much to talk about. We didn't even get into the topic of our first AIDS client, which was also at our location in Brooklyn at 616 Pacific Street in Brooklyn. Street. Yeah, where the Barcade Center is now.
Yes, right.
That's where we were located. I think in 1985 we opened up there.
And he was a visionary. He said he would open up this healing compound in Honduras,
right? And
he sure did.
Right. So that's the whole dynamics of an engineer, right? To I mean, we all have this ability to have the thought, right? Then to draw it on paper, and then to take that in the third dimension where it actually manifests as a center. I watched that happen because I watched him first talk about it as a thought. Then he used to sit around with people and draw it. Though the huts are going to be round and the kitchen is going to be in the right here in the center. It's going to be one main dining hall, and we're going to use the thermal waters. So we got to go someplace where there are thermal waters. And then, years later, the thing was actually built. He chose Honduras because they do have the thermal waters. However, I want to end by saying this. Leroy Baylor, you were the gateway to New York City. You were the gateway to the black community, knowing who Sebi and all of us are. Because you were the ones, we were on your radio platform first. And then, ironically, Bob Law, he's another brother who was responsible for making our name and what we did in the community as a grassroots organization, providing information and services to better the spiritual, mental development of our people. because he was on Night Talks before with Bob
right.
Law.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, he was on Ruddy Duckett.
Yep.
He was on Mark Riley.
Yep.
And you introduced us to all of those individual hosts of the Black Radio collective in the 60s and 70s and 80s.
Because when you have something good for the people, you got to get the information to the people. And each one of those brothers
Yes.
were keys to an audience that otherwise would not be reached.
Right.
So, this has been The Communicators, coming to you from the Grand Houses Community Radio in Harlem, USA. Our guest has been Sister Annette Thomas, and you have her phone number. And this is part one of a series of interviews dealing with Dr. Sebi, and most important, with the healing that he was able to do and the guidance that we should be considering following today, even though he is not present, but he's present in the form of his students who he taught herbalism to, not only Sister Annette, but Sister Ma'a and his daughters.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your viewing of The Communicators. I want to thank the residents of Grand Houses for having a community radio, Grand Houses Community Radio. God bless you all with a wonderful and an excellent year.
Yeah. Thank you, Leroy, brother.
Thank you, sis. Brother Rick,
Yes.
we off.
Okay.
How was that?
The evil of light once almost destroyed the world, and now it has returned.
My children, they have power and vision.
Bring them to me.
We are family, and we fight as one.
Welcome to the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change. The center is the living legacy to Dr. King and his dream.
He had a dream?
Oh yes, he had a dream for freedom, justice, and equality for all people, everywhere.
What's this?
This is the Nobel Peace Prize awarded to Dr. King for his nonviolent work.
What's that?
That's the proclamation declaring Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday a national holiday, a holiday for peace.
Was Dr. King a good man? Was he a smart man? Was he a kind man?
Yes, he was all of these things.
How come you know so much about him? Yeah!